Valley Talk on News Talk 1580 KGAL.
And a very good morning. I'm Dave Adams, and welcome to Skin Talk. At this time every month, the second Thursday of the month, we have physicians from Silver Falls Dermatology in the studios, and we talk about all things skin-related and dermatological-related. Dr. Bill Lear is a skin cancer surgeon, and he is in here with Valley Talk today on Skin Talk. And Bill, thank you for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here.
One would think that we're going into the fall time of year.
Yes.
And the most incidences of skin cancer occur during the summer when you're out there getting the tan and so on and so forth. And do we have a tendency to get somewhat lax in the fall because, you know, it's cloudy, overcast, I can't get the sunburn?
Yeah.
Do we get lazy?
We do, I think, and there's a couple of points I think to raise is, today's the first, we've had such good weather here in Oregon for the past few months. It's really been a blessing. I only moved here about 4 years ago, and this is the best October I think I've had. But today is the first day where it was really kind of like, oh God, here we go, fog and rain. But interestingly, even on a day like today, 50% of the UV gets through. So even on a day like today, even though you might not get a sunburn, you can still get the damage of UV. So I guess the number one point is that even though you're not getting a sunburn, you're still getting damage. So for a lot of people, like especially for people who want to preserve their youth, for people who don't want to get wrinkles, for people who don't want to get age spots, you'd be best off every day putting on a facial moisturizer that has an SPF in it.
Even like today? Even today.
Every day. Because every day, UVA, especially UVA, is coming through. And the UVA is actually, there's three types of UV. There's UVA, UVB, and UVC. UVC mostly is blocked by the ozone layer. It's very, very high intensity rays. It's the same kind of UV that's used in laboratories to kill bacteria and stuff. Then there's UVA and UVB, and those are the two types you hear about. There's about 1,000 times more UVA than UVB at the surface of the Earth. Most of the UVA comes through the cloud cover. UVA can come through glass. It can come through, semi kind of transparent kind of materials, whereby UVB is blocked by your car window blocks UVB, plastic blocks UVB, lots of things block UVB. So a lot of UVA comes through, and people used to think that UVB was the only damaging ray. UVB is what causes sunburn. Like if you look at your sun protection screen that you have right now, what does it say? It says SPF. SPF only measures how much UVB is blocked, the burning rays. So you can differentiate the two by saying UVB, B is for burning. SPF is how much burning ray you block. And I could determine the SPF of a sunscreen on you today, Dave. All I would do is I would take half of your back and I'd put the recommended amount of sunscreen on it, and the other half of your back I would do nothing, and then I'd shine UVB light on your back. And how much the dose of UVB that would be required to cause a burn would be different in the two sides, and the ratio is the SPF. So if it took 15 times more UVB to cause a burn on the protected side as the unprotected side has an SPF of 15.
That's what that means.
That's what that means. That's how you calculate it. So you can see, though, that if you have an SPF of 15, that's blocking, if you do the math on it, that blocks 93% of the rays. An SPF of 30, blocks something like 95% of the rays, whatever. But it's like an inverse, there's decreasing marginal returns as you go up in SPF. So really, you see a lot of these new sunscreens that have like SPF of 85.
Right.
Okay, an SPF of 85 and an SPF of 50 or 40 even is a moot point. You're kind of almost wasting your money on that extra SPF.
Really? I always thought and I've seen some sunblock SPF 80.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
Well, I'll buy that. More is better, right?
Well, you think that SPF of 80 is twice as effective as SPF of 40, but it's not. SPF of 40 is going to block like 98%. SPF of 80 is going to block 99. So the difference is only 1%. So you're paying, the $4 or $5 for what is essentially an inconsequential difference in the protection from UVB.
This brings up a number of questions. So UVB is the burning rays.
Right.
That's what's blocked by your car window, by the window, so on and so forth. UVA and UVC also cause damage.
Oh, yes.
How can you tell the damage is being caused if you don't see a burn?
Bingo. So UVC, all of that is blocked. Like if I was to have a source of UVC here today in the studio, like we would both know it. It would be very uncomfortable, and we'd get a bad burn from it. But luckily, we're almost never exposed to UVC. But UVA, so there are ways of knowing, but it's delayed. So if I was to get damaged by UVB, I would note the redness and the swelling and the tingling and burning within like 6 to 12 hours. And when we do UVB therapy, we rarely do it back to back because we want to see those delayed effects of the UVB. The long and the short of it is with UVA, you can tell the difference. Like if you were to get a pure UVA burn on Monday, by like Thursday, you'd be able to tell, but it's very, very delayed.
Have you ever been down under Australia, New Zealand?
I haven't, but my sister-in-law lives in Perth right now.
Okay. I have lived in New Zealand for 9 months, I believe it was, and there is an intensity of the sun that's not, you can feel it searing. Now, in New Zealand, there is the ozone layer down there is less. The incidence of skin cancer in New Zealand is extremely high.
It's extraordinarily high.
Right.
Yeah.
And for example, I've used this example before, you may not have heard it, but I went in January, I came off a snowmobile trip here in the States, went down to New Zealand, and didn't use any sun protection factor on my legs.
Right.
Went to the beach.
Ouch.
30 minutes. 30 minutes.
Yeah.
30 minutes.
Right.
I had second-degree burns the following day. Bubbling of the skin, peeling of the skin, blistering. And that it was extremely painful. But there's an intensity, and I'm wondering if it's the UVC.
Well, it's the UVB. The UVB comes through more potent there as well.
But the sun feels different.
It does feel different. It's closer, and there is an intensity to it, and there's more of it, and it's less blocked. And there's no question about it. We look at, in terms of how likely you are to get skin cancer, we call that incidence. Incidence is the number of cases of a disease per year in a given area, okay? So the incidence of skin cancer here in the Northwest, you're looking at maybe about 100 cases per 100,000 people per year, okay? In Australia, it's 2,500. Wow. So it's 25 times. But you think about the population in Australia, what do you have? Besides the natives, you've got a lot of people who are very fair-skinned, who came from Northern Europe many, many years ago, and have come to an area that they're really not genetically predisposed to live in. Their skin is just not ready for it. So, the rates of skin cancer down there are astounding. And it is because there's a very, very high degree of UV exposure down there.
Interesting.
And so that's why, and in Australia, they've developed big campaigns because it's very expensive to have all of that skin cancer. They had the slip, slop, slap campaign down there where, like, you slip on a shirt, you slap on a hat and slop on sunscreen kind of thing. I always get it confused, what's slip and what's slop and what's slap. But it's very well known down there. I mean, this is on billboards, and parents know this, and children know this. And they even organize, school schedules around minimizing how much UV exposure the kids get.
School uniform in New Zealand, they make the little kids wear this cute little floppy blue hat that's got this, so you have these Kiwi kids running around bare feet and with a blue T-shirt and a blue floppy hat. It looks really cute.
See, that's perfect.
And they have to wear their hat, and if they don't wear their hat, they get in trouble. And the reason is because the incidence of skin cancer is just epidemic.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's, I don't understand that. But the first time I got out in the sun, the experience I had with a 30-minute sunburn led me to believe these guys know what they're talking about.
Right. And even within the States, if you go, I've gone from an Oregon, dreary March to Palm Desert, Palm Springs area. The difference there, and that's well documented as well. Here we're looking at an incidence of about 100 per 100,000 per year skin cancer. You go to Phoenix, it's more like 400 or 500. So it's about 4 or 5 times the risk.
Let's talk about sunbirds. There are people that follow the sun. They're getting ready. In fact, they're packing up right now. Getting ready to head down south. Do they need to be very concerned because they're going to the areas where the summer is all the time?
Right.
They follow the sun.
Right. Well, I love talking about this. So that relates to the base tan. So that's the tan that people get where they say, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to give myself a little bit of a tan to kind of harden up my skin. Okay?
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
Now, so what do you think the SPF, if you were to go get yourself a really luxurious brown
Sexy tan.
Right.
Okay.
Fantastic, right? What do you think the SPF of that is? How much protection are you getting from that?
From just
that
the
tan.
golden skin tan.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess SPF, I want to say 8.
2.
Oh!
Yeah. So, I mean, it does give you a little SPF. Here's another one. Let's say somehow you could get the skin type of an African American. Okay?
Okay.
What do you think the SPF of that is?
I'm going to go with 8 again.
About 4 or 5.
Okay.
But that cumulatively gives them a lot lower risk of skin cancer. But for the acute exposure, you can still get a sunburn. You can still get the ill effects of UV radiation. So the base tan is baseless. That there's no other way of putting it. But there is a purpose in hardening, but it's related to a very uncommon skin disease. And it's called polymorphous light eruption. And there's a number of related conditions in which the first time you go out in the sun, and maybe some viewers have experienced this where, we've had 3 months of dreariness, there hasn't really been a lot of light exposure, and you've been covered up. You go out into the sun, and I used to get this when I was a kid. You'd go out into the sun for the first time, and you'd get these little itchy bumps on your arms. It wasn't a burn. It was almost like just little bumps, almost like fly bites, but they're not fly bites. There was no flies around. There was it's not like you were rolling around in the sand and got flea bites or something.
Yeah.
They're just little bumps, and they don't happen on your face or your hands because those areas are what we call hardened. It happens in areas that have been uncovered for a while. We don't know why this happens, but the most common reason is this polymorphic light eruption. So people who have this polymorphic light eruption, they do benefit from hardening. And what we do for those patients is we put them in to our light boxes, which are graded amounts of ultraviolet. We start them at a very low level, and then we titrate them up. And that hardens their skin so that when they go to Palm Desert or Australia or wherever they're going to be where there's a higher amount of UV, they're not going to get that polymorphic light eruption. That's where the hardening idea comes from. And that's what we call it in dermatology, is hardening. But in terms of preventing skin cancer, in terms of preventing skin damage, in terms of preventing wrinkling or sunspots or anything else that people want to prevent, it doesn't do any of those things.
We've talked about suntans a lot, but I guess we continue to talk about it because it's very, very important. One of the things that I think young people, especially young women, need to be aware of is that they're 20 years old and they have this beautiful bronze tan, and sometimes it's very dark bronze. It's a very sexy looking tan. However, fast forward about 30 years.
Yeah, leather.
And it's, I've seen it, when I lived down under, I've seen some guys, in fact, a farmer, not going to mention his name, but the guy looked like he had alligator skin.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, wow. And it was from being out in the sun. Down under, he was in Australia and then New Zealand, and it was remarkable.
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, and you can see it even around our community. You can look at people, and we're dermatologists, so we're kind of, trained, when I'm in Fred Meyer's or when I'm at the grocery store, I will see people, and I can tell how much light exposure they've had in their lifetime. There's a lot of telltale signs. Fine lines. You look at somebody like, even though she grew up in Australia, someone like Nicole Kidman, her skin looks great, and I'm sure part of that is from 6 figures spent at plastic surgeons and dermatologist's office. But, when you look, if people were to aspire to a Nicole Kidman look from the time they were 12, let's say a 12-year-old girl said today, hey, Nicole Kidman, she looks real good for someone in her 40s. I'd like to look like her when I'm 40. How would I do that? How you would do that is basically protect yourself from the sun. You're going to protect yourself from the blotchy pigmentation that people get. You're going to protect yourself from the fine lines that people get. When people's skin wrinkles, it's because the elastin is broken down. There's two main molecules in your skin: collagen and elastin. And you hear them bantered about, you know, when people are talking about lotions and whatnot on TV, like Oil Olay and, you know, different products will talk about collagen. These are large molecules. You know, if, you could put pounds of collagen on top of your skin. It's not going to get into your skin. The only way to get collagen into your skin is to make it and not break it down. It's very difficult for your body to make new collagen, but it's easy to not break it down. And the main way people break it down is with UVA and sun exposure. So chronically breaking it down with that UVA, even though you don't know you're getting a burn from the UVA, you know, it's coming through the car window or coming through whatever source, it's getting broken down, as is the elastin. And when you lose that elastin, when you lose that framework of your skin, what happens when you lose the framework of your house? Your house collapses. When you lose the framework of your skin collapses.
How do you protect against UVA? We've mentioned...
Yes.
Okay, we've mentioned that the SPF, the sunblocks, block UVB for UV burn.
Right.
UVA.
Right.
It comes through the glass, comes through the sunblock.
Right.
How do we
So
save
this
ourselves?
is a really, really good point. And this is why SPF is not a good measure. And the FDA knows that. And so sunscreens are actually going to be relabeled soon. There's new labeling coming on for sunscreens. And it was supposed to come out in June of 2012, but it got delayed. So there's going to be new labeling on sunscreens. But the long and the short of it is there's two ways you can make a sunscreen, okay? You can make a physical blocker or a chemical blocker. A physical blocker physically blocks the UV rays. And so that would be like your zinc oxide, your titanium dioxide, you know, the stuff that the lifeguards put on their nose, and it's got a white kind of chalkiness. Now, there are products these days that are physical blockers that don't cause that chalky residue, but a lot do, okay? So there's physical block. Now, physical block blocks everything. It blocks UVA, UVB, some visible light, and so it's very, very effective. Most sunscreens are chemical blockers, and what that means is they absorb certain wavelengths. So UVB is from 290 to 320 nanometers. That's its spectrum of wavelength. UVA is 320 to 400, and then 400 to 700 is visible light, okay? So the problem with chemical sunscreens is they only block certain wavelengths. So there are certain chemicals that block UVA, and there's certain chemicals that block UVB. So like you correctly said, SPF is only measuring the UVB blocking chemicals in sunscreen. The problem is it doesn't measure the UVA. The good news about all of this is pretty much any sunscreen you buy these days in the States has a good UVA blocker in it as well.
Okay.
And, you know, some names that you'd look for would be oxybenzone and avobenzone. Those are kind of the two common UVA blockers in there. There's another one called Parsol 1789, which is really good. And there's a number of UVA, there's a number of compounds. Mexeril is another one. It's a really fantastic UVA blocker. But all of these chemical blockers only block certain wavelengths. So let's say UVA is 320 to 400. It's that spectrum. Some of them might only block 20 of those. So they might block like 320 to 340 kind of thing. So they're not perfect. You know, the perfect would be physical blockade, either with sun protective clothing, which has a weave and a chemical in it that provides a high degree of blockage, or a physical blocker that, I mean, those little titanium dioxide particles are physically blocking and reflecting the UV or absorbing it, and they're much broader kind of protection. Okay. So the answer is once the new FDA labeling comes out, it'll be a lot easier for consumers because you're no longer going to have this nonsense of SPF 85 and 90. They're just going to say 50 plus.
Okay. Are you from Canada by chance?
I'm from Newfoundland.
Okay, I every once in a while I sense that in your voice.
I've gone from one foggy coast to another foggy coast.
Well, welcome to this foggy coast.
Thank you.
You're on, what do they say, the left coast?
Right, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Dr. Bill Lear is with Silver Falls Dermatology. You're the Mohs surgeon.
Mohs surgeon.
And
That's right.
you're the skin cancer surgeon.
I'm the skin cancer guy.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break here, but Charlotte Staggs?
Correct.
With an S? Okay, let me just turn on your microphone. She walked in about 10, 15 minutes ago, and I've been a terrible host because I didn't acknowledge her presence and say welcome to Valley Talk, so welcome to Valley Talk.
Thank you.
And on that note, we're going to take a break, but we will be right back. I'm Dave Adams. This is Skin Talk, and hang on, we're going to be right back in just a moment.
Having a confident smile can change everything. Just think if you never again needed tight lips to hide behind. Instead, think how you could feel during the liberating joy of a beaming, wide-open grin. It really can happen. Just call Dr. Dennis Clark and ask about Invisalign, the clear alternative to braces. Invisalign straightens your teeth with a series of clear, customized, removable aligners. If it weren't for the remarkable way they were transforming your smile, you'd hardly even notice them. And even though Invisalign aligners are virtually invisible, they can always be removed for eating or special occasions. Dr. Dennis Clark has been serving Mid-Valley residents since 1981, and that's why the Mid-Valley is brighter, happier, and yes, healthier. Whether you have crooked or widely spaced teeth or overbites, Invisalign treatments can help alleviate periodontal diseases and painful jaw and joint problems. For a free consultation about Invisalign, call the Laser Dentist, Dr. Dennis Clark in Lebanon at 541-451-1440 or toll free at 866-351-5453.
If you have lived in the Mid-Willamette Valley for just a short time or possibly most of your life, you probably know a lot about Mennonite Village of Albany. In fact, their reputation is well known throughout the Pacific Northwest. They are a faith-based community in the Mennonite tradition of faith, family, and friendship. As a continuing care retirement community, they provide housing and support services designed to meet the changing needs of persons of all faiths and beliefs. The Mennonite Village offers a variety of retirement living arrangements, including active living homes, congregate living apartments, assisted living apartments, Alzheimer's and dementia care, and nursing and rehabilitation. As a nonprofit organization, their rates for these services are quite reasonable. Right now is a perfect time to contact Gene Stutzman for a tour of the Mennonite Village to check them out at 5353 Columbus Street Southeast in Albany. Online at MennoniteVillage.org or call 541-928-7232. That's 541-928-7232.
This weekend, it's the Mid-Valley's 9th Annual Greek Food Fest. Greek food, Greek music, Greek food, Greek dancing, and Greek food. Wine and spirits, music and crafts. Complete dinners for only $13, $10 for seniors, $8 per child. Or just raise for appetizers and desserts. All proceeds help pay for the renovation and maintenance of the historic Lewisburg Grange Hall. This weekend, follow the music, food, and fun to the Lewisburg Grange Hall for the 9th Annual Greek Food Fest.
Did you know there are about 1 million pellet stoves and inserts in the United States and Canada, yet just over 80 mills throughout North America to supply them? One of the best is in our own backyard, right there in Mill City. Pack Saddle Pellets from Frank Lumber. Made from 100% Douglas fir, Pack Saddle Pellets are now at Economy Supply Building Center. Pack Saddle Pellets have no chemical additives and provide consistent, clean-burning heat at an Economy Supply price you'll love. Economy Supply Building Center, where Highway 34 meets Tangent Street in Lebanon.
Want to really know more? Just point, click, and learn from the Mid-Valley's best website, KGAL.com.
We are back again with Skin Talk on KGAL. I'm Dave Adams. Glad you're with us today. It is the second Thursday of the month, so just make a note that Skin Talk is... So when you have issues, when you have questions about, dermatology issues, even during the show, you can email me, Dave at KGAL.com. And if you want to get an answer on the air, we can take a look at it. Please don't put your name in there, so we're not mentioning your identity. But if you have some general questions, please feel free to contribute. So if you want to learn more about skin cancers, we're going to talk more about precancerous issues in just a moment. But if you want to learn more about suntan lotion, we learned a lot about sun blockers and what to block for, what to look for, and the fact that the blocking factor, or the code that we measure the blocking factor, is changing.
Right.
So thanks for bringing that information. Let's talk about treating precancerous lesions. And in the studio today we have Dr. Bill Lehr, who is the Mohs surgeon, and he deals with the skin cancer surgery. We also have a physician's assistant, Charlotte Staggs, with us in the Valley Talk studios today. So welcome both of you, and Charlotte and Bill, for being on the show. So Bill, let's talk about treating precancerous lesions.
Well, I like to look at, a lot of things in medicine and probably in life can be looked at like a river. Okay? So in a river, you've got upstream events and downstream events. So if you were going to kayak, okay, you wouldn't learn how to kayak when you're in the rapids. You'd learn to kayak when you're in the gentle water, which is upstream. So upstream you think of as kind of calm, you've got time to plan. Downstream is where the rapids are and where the rocks are and where you better know what's going on. And things happen downstream as a result of how well you've planned upstream, okay? So, for instance, with heart disease, upstream things with heart disease would be, did you smoke? How well have you exercised?
Bingo.
How well have you taken care of yourself? Those are upstream things. Diet, right. Downstream things would be, you get high blood pressure, or you get diabetes, you get other risk factors. Further downstream from that would be a heart attack and bypass surgery and those kind of discussions. So wearing sunscreen and protecting yourself from the sun, being aware that even on a day like today, UVA is getting through, that's very, very upstream. Now we're going to come downstream. We're coming downstream a little bit to precancer. So you've already had years of damage. By the way, 70% to 80% of your UVA damage happens before you're 18. So a lot of it is kind of done by the time you reach adulthood, but it's ongoing.
Is that because you're out in the sun more?
That's because you're out in the sun more.
Okay.
It's just a kind of a statistical aberration of the fact that you play when you're young, and we're not out playing today. We're in the studio, and if we were kids, we'd probably be out playing. But you're continuing to do that damage to your skin. And so now we're at the point where, hey, okay, upstream we allowed some damage to happen. You know, we've had some sunburns when we were a kid. We've been to Palm Desert a bunch of times, golfing or doing water sports and whatnot and sailing. And so we've damaged the upper layer of the skin, which is called your epidermis. There's two layers, main layers of skin. There's the epidermis, which is the top layer, and then there's the dermis, which is where that collagen and elastin, which is the thickness layer of your skin, okay? So now we're talking about that top layer of the skin. So the top layer of the skin has been damaged by the sun, and because of the damage, those cells in the upper layer, they don't know how to regulate themselves normally. They don't know how to divide normally and pass away peacefully. Instead, they form these thick, crusty, white spots. And some of our listeners, I'm sure, will know what I'm talking about here. It typically starts happening when you're in your 40s, 50s, maybe your 60s. Happens mostly on your face, on the backs of your hands. A lot of women get them on the shins because women wear more skirts and whatnot than men typically do. And they're real, real rough. They almost feel, you know, like stalactites or stalagmites that you would find in caves. Real rough, almost like rocks. Much scalier than like a dermatitis or a psoriasis or something like that. They're very characteristic. Like if you come to your dermatologist or your primary care doc, you know, it's kind of like a one-looker is what I like to call it, and it's very easy to tell by looking and feeling. So now we're kind of downstream where, hey, you've gotten some damage, you've got some precancers. You don't necessarily have any full-blown skin cancers, but they're cosmetically unsightly. And there's the issue of, well, they can transform into cancer. We don't know fully the rate that they do transform into cancer. Some people say it's about 1%. So in other words, if you had 100 of these precancer lesions that we call actinic keratoses or AKs, if you had 100 of them, one of them might transform into cancer. Other people say it's as high as 10%. 10% transform into cancer. But there's definitely a transformation. A certain proportion of those will transform into a cancer, and it's more typically squamous cell cancer for the actinic keratosis. But there's definitely a risk. So there's an interest and an appetite, a large appetite, to treat these things. And I equate treating these things to weeding. You know, if you go into your lawn and you see weeds, what can you do? There's two ways you can treat the weeds I look at. I can either pull the weed or I can use Roundup.
Right.
And that's the equivalent that we have in dermatology for these precancerous lesions. So the equivalent of weeding them would be physically destroying them. So I could use liquid nitrogen and I could freeze it, which is the modality most used by primary care docs and dermatologists. It's the old mainstay. You can scrape it off, like you could numb it up and you could use a sharp instrument and scrape it off. You can use carbon dioxide laser, you could heat it. You could do what's called electrodesiccation, where you take a high frequency, high voltage electric source that kind of zaps it and kills the cells in the process. So those would be weeding techniques, okay? But the most exciting thing are the new, what I would call Roundup techniques. And Roundup is a trademark, of course, and I probably shouldn't be using it, but it's a process where we apply a chemical. I'm sure Roundup wouldn't mind.
I think the trademark police are taking the day off.
Right. But, you know, it's a process where we treat a field. And that's a very in vogue kind of statement in dermatology, is field treatment. So if you had, let's say I was looking at you, and you have great skin, by the way.
Well, thank you.
But let's say that you had 2 little precancers on your forehead.
Okay.
The weeding would be, we could zap those with the liquid nitrogen or blast them with some mechanism. But the field treatment would be, you would treat your entire forehead with a cream or one of these new kind of procedures that we use. And that's kind of a nice and kind of exciting and expanding area in dermatology. It used to be, the first of these treatments was 5-fluorouracil. And 5-fluorouracil is a pretty aggressive chemotherapy agent that's given, you know, for bladder cancer and a lot of different cancers by oncologists. And it's usually given through an intravenous, you know, you need to have a special intravenous line because it burns and it goes into your system and causes a lot of side effects.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very potent. It's a very potent chemotherapy agent. But what they did with this 5-fluorouracil is they put it into a cream form, and it turns out that it's very effective for these precancers. And so this has been used for, gosh, probably 20 years or more.
So what does it do? Does it burn off the top layers?
So what 5-fluorouracil does is it interferes with DNA. So in every cell in your body, you know, there's an outer layer of the cell, there's like a tennis ball and a basketball. So the basketball is the outside of the cell and the tennis ball is the inside of the cell. Within the tennis ball is the genetic material that kind of dictates everything. It's like the government of the cell. And so within that tennis ball is the government of the cell, which is the DNA, the deoxyribonucleic acid, and that is what's damaged within the cell by UVA and UVB. And UVA and UVB damage it in different ways, but it gets damaged, and that's why you get these little precancers. And so what happens is 5-fluorouracil goes into the tennis ball and attaches to the DNA and messes up the ability of the cell to reproduce itself. And it does that preferentially to cells that are growing faster, which are what kind of cells? Typically cancer cells, right. And the reason you get side effects of chemotherapy is that other rapidly dividing cells are also affected. So like the inner layer of your mouth reproduces very quickly, you know, your hair, your GI tract, all of those tissues are turning over frequently. So tissues that are turning over frequently are more affected by the chemo than tissues that are dividing slowly.
That's why.
Right.
That's why you have the chemotherapy reactions.
Right. Because rapidly dividing cells are being affected. Like your immune system cells, they turn over super rapidly. And that's why, you know, you're more prone to infection when you're on chemotherapy.
Interesting.
And so what happens with precancer is you're putting this cream on your face, and it's interfering with the ability of your body, of those cells, to replicate. And so you're kind of preferentially targeting cancerous cells. So if we were to put this on your forehead, well, it looked like you had 3 precancers, but when we use these precancer creams, these field treatments, oftentimes we might see 25 or 30 on your forehead. We would see what are the nidus, or the start of more precancers. And so what you're doing with these creams, we think, is that you're not only treating the 3 precancers that you had that were visible, but we're treating cancers and precancers that we didn't even know existed there.
Interesting. Is that typically the only cream you use?
No, so that was the prototype cream, but there's all these new creams out now. So there's different so what drug companies do is they will release a molecule. Okay, so the molecule here is 5-fluorouracil, but then they'll put it in different concentrations. So it's like milk. You know, you can buy whole milk, or you can buy 2% milk, or you can buy 1% milk, or you can buy skim milk. It's milk. It's the same product, essentially, but there's different concentrations of milk fat in it. If they do the same, the drug companies do the same, albeit they charge 500 times the price that they do for milk. And So the drug companies, what they do, so like with fluorouracil, they came out with 5% fluorouracil, and then they come out with like 3.75% fluorouracil, which they brand as a different kind of drug, and they say it has different efficacy. So there's a number of different molecules and concentrations, but that was kind of the first molecule per se. Then they came out and they said, well, there's two ways. There's another way to fight cancer. You can up your immune system. So immunity plays a big role in cancer, and that's, if you get run down, you kind of know inherently there's a higher chance of you getting sick. Okay?
Yeah, I would love to share a story about this. A personal friend of mine was recovering from cancer.
Okay.
And I won't even tell you the gender of this person. People might know them, and I don't want to,
Right, jeopardize their privacy.
So, when you're recovering from cancer and then you just say, I'm cured, I'm just going to go pedal to the metal and just work,
right.
Get 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night and go for it. And then what happened in this case was the cancer came back with a vengeance.
Right.
And so the running down was getting...
Right.
You get run down in your immune deficient, your immune system.
Right. So your immune system does a lot of things. But one of the key things that your immune system does is it does surveillance of your body. And it surveys your body to see if the cells are normal. And it has a number of different mechanisms by which it does that. But if your immune system is not functioning normally, then your immune system is not surveying the cells normally. So people who have, there are inherited conditions, for example, where people's immune systems don't work properly. A lot of those syndromes, people get more skin cancer and more, not just skin cancer, but blood cancers and different kinds of cancer. HIV and AIDS. Those patients get much higher incidence of different cancers, including skin cancer, because their bodies aren't surveying for cancer the way our bodies are. And there's a converse to that. And the converse is, well, geez, if not having enough immunity is going to make me have more cancer, what if I was to increase my immunity? What if I was to locally say to your forehead, turn on the immune system? Wouldn't that reduce cancer? Wouldn't your body then say, hey, I'm going to fight off stuff that previously I was ignoring? I was ignoring those spots on Dave's forehead. Well, I'm not going to ignore them anymore. I'm going to send in inflammatory cells like immune cells to kill off the precancer and the cancer. And you'd say, well, how are you going to get your body to do that? Well, there are ways. And so new chemicals were devised, which are basically like extracts from plants and whatnot, that activate the innate side of your immune system. There's an innate and adaptive side of your immune system, but it activates your immune system, and in doing so, it activates your own body to fight off the cancer.
Interesting. We're going to have to take a break here, and at some point, we're going to talk to Charla. And we need to do that in this next segment of the show because we're getting close to, we got about 15 minutes left to go. This is Skin Talk. I'm Dave Adams, and we'll be right back.
Osgood File, sponsored in part by Auto Owners Insurance, the no-problem people. Visit AutoOwners.com. This is Charles Osgood. At the end of a red dirt road west of Charlotte, North Carolina, our CBS News colleague Byron Pitts followed the sound of hammers to Madge Jones' house.
Can somebody bring me some nails?
The roof leaked, but since her husband died 2.5 years ago, she had no money to fix it. She made one phone call. In a matter of days, a group of volunteers showed up, armed with tool belts and enthusiasm. They're known as the Women Roofers. They've repaired roofs for free for the past 10 years.
The story after this. In this moment, who has your back? Do you know the name of your insurance agent? Does your agent know your name? Or would you call a 1-800 number that connects you with who? Another state? Another country? Get a local, independent insurance agent with Auto Owners Insurance. Someone you can call when bad stuff happens to your car, home, or business. In this moment, get an agent who will protect you in that moment. Auto Owners Insurance, the no-problem people.
In Martinsville, call BB&T Insurance Services of Martinsville at 276-666-3600.
When I heard Wells Fargo was giving their customers a free credit score, I figured I'd stop in.
It's part of our limited time promotion. We'll give you a personal access code so you can obtain a free credit score and complimentary credit report. We can also talk about your credit score and how it impacts you.
Good to know.
Stop into Wells Fargo from now until November 15, 2012 and ask a banker about how to get your personal access code to obtain a free credit score and complimentary credit report. Wells Fargo. Together we'll go far. Wells Fargo Bank N.A. See a banker for specific promotion details.
Madge Jones is, of course, delighted that the women roofers are fixing her roof. Byron Pitts asked her,
how do you see these women? Are they neighbors? Are they sisters?
They're my heroes.
who are they anyway, Byron?
Most of these volunteers are professional women, a nurse, small business owners, retirees.
Nell Bovender organized the group and manages the donations for supplies. She told Byron that they can't fix everybody's roof.
We only help people that make less than half of the median income. That's a family of two makes less than $20,000 a year. That's not a lot of money.
You have lots of folks like that here.
Yeah, we have 135 people on the waiting list.
Now here is what makes Byron Pitts a great reporter. He asked Nell Bovender this inspired question.
So if you all could talk to the two men who want to be our next president, what would you want to ask them?
Take a lesson from what we do. Because I work alongside with this group of women, some of the most conservative Republicans, some of the most liberal Democrats, and we're working together for a common good. Why can't the two sides find the common ground to make a difference?
Maybe it's more complicated than that, Byron.
The philosophy here is pretty simple. Pick a problem and fix it.
The Osgood File. Charles Osgood on the CBS Radio Network.
When you look out across Willamette Valley, you'll see plenty of banking choices. But we're here to give you an option that's pretty unique, like no other in fact. Hi, I'm Dave Wood, President and CEO of Willamette Community Bank. We provide an alternative to large national and regional banks by offering customized financial services and local decision-making to benefit local people, local families, and local businesses. How many banks can say that? Willamette Community Bank, service like no other, we promise. Member FDIC.
Friday at Carmike 12.
Someone is coming for you.
Halloween is coming.
Don't tell anyone.
Once you see his image, who are you? You unleash his evil.
Sounds sinister.
The ancient church believed he consumes the souls of children.
Daddy, are you okay?
Take the kids. We have to leave here now. Sinister, rated R, in theaters October 12th.
Friday at Carmike 12.
To protect the security of our fellow citizens. For the duration of the national emergency,
society is collapsing. What can be done?
The statutes of Directive 10-289 shall remain in effect.
Perhaps Big Brother can help.
All copyrights shall be transferred to the federal government. All wages and other forms of income are hereby frozen.
Atlas Shrugged Part 2, Friday at Carmike 12, Corvallis.
It's all happening so fast.
I won't be a slave.
Health Talk with Dr. Bob Martin, Sunday mornings on News Talk 1580, KGAL.
This is Skin Talk, and as promised, we are going to be talking to Charlotte Stagg's physician's assistant at Silver Falls Dermatology. Dr. Bill Lair has been very, very fascinating, interesting conversation about skin cancers, precancerous treatments, and also the new grading factor for sunblocks that's coming up. That's very, very interesting. Charlotte, we've got to allow you to get in here and say something. What we want to talk to you about is we were talking about treating precancerous lesions with a topical skin cream. What do patients experience with these kind of treatments?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to be quite as entertaining as Dr. Lear here, but...
Where's your accent? Where are you from?
I'm from Arizona. Phoenix.
Arizona.
Yeah.
The Phoenix accent.
Yeah, that's the Phoenix accent.
Okay.
Well, when they use the topical creams, like Dr. Lear was saying, we may visualize 2 lesions, and then all of a sudden, it lights up 25, and that's the goal. That's what we want to happen. And so, people come in. They come in the next day. They call emergently because they've got blisters, they've got sores, they have maybe even ulcers, and they're really worried about infection. And they come in, and we look at it, and our first impression is like, awesome, you have an awesome reaction, and they look at you horrified, like, what is so awesome about this, and it can be painful, and so definitely we help out with some pain medication. But the one thing, like Dr. Lear was talking about, is we don't want to reverse that response. So,
Right.
Immediately some patients may think that, go give me a steroid cream or something to help with the inflammation. But we don't want to, like I said, we don't want to shut that down. We don't want to turn it off. We want it to keep going, because we do want your immune response to, get rid of those lesions. So that's the whole goal.
And we here in America are very fast food oriented. We want it, and we want it now.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to put up with that kind of process.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I want my McDonald's Happy Meal in 2 minutes, and I want my skin cancer done in 60 seconds or less. So that's kind of our culture.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the older creams, like that 5-fluorouracil, we would use those for 6 weeks, a 6-week treatment. But, like we have the new ALA treatment, which, Charla does and I do, and we do in a lot of in our offices here in Oregon. And that one, we put a cream on. We let it sit in for between 1 hour and 16 hours. I know that sounds like a big gap, but it depends on your situation and whatnot. But basically, it's one application of cream, and then we shine a light for 1,000 seconds. Why 1,000 seconds? Because that was the original trial, and that's what the FDA has wanted us to do. So anyway, we shine a light for 1,000 seconds, and it's a blue light or a red light sometimes, but typically we use a blue light, and that activates the chemical. And then activating the chemical causes this inflammatory response, like, Charlotte was just describing. And for 2 days, you can't go into the sun because you've got this photoactive chemical on your sun, and you're red for 2 to 3 weeks. But there's an example of one where you don't need to apply cream, twice a day for 4 to 6 weeks kind of thing. It's a one and done kind of thing. There's also a new cream out, which is a branded cream, and it's kind of very expensive. But with that one, you don't have to apply the cream as long.
No, it's 3 days for face or 2 days for other body
Right.
areas.
So, the drug companies kind of know this, and they're making the field treatments so they're not as onerous. It doesn't have to be as long a process. I am a personal fan of the older treatment, the 5-fluorouracil, because I'm kind of conservative and I like new treatments to prove themselves. Although this new ALA treatment I find is very effective and has had great success with, how I talked about some patients have inherited diseases that predispose them to skin cancer. The ALA is one of the best treatments, for those kind of patients, and that for me is an indication of how effective it is as a treatment. I think, we can't really get into it at this point in the conversation, but it just works very effectively through a number of different pathways. So, for people who want to go through this kind of field treatments, there are new options that you don't have to, be red for like half of the fall or half of the winter kind of thing.
Okay. I think we have one more break coming up, and then we'll wrap up the show. Hang on just a second. Skin Talk will be back momentarily.
Family owned and operated since 1979, Crabtree Auto stresses the small stuff when it comes to maintaining your vehicle. An oil change every 3,000 miles is a small thing now, but adds up to big rewards down the road. For only $26.95, you can have an ASC certified auto technician give your car a real oil change. Rotate your tires, check your brakes, and do the full maintenance check. Crabtree Auto can help your vehicle maintain its reliability beyond 200,000 miles. Stop by Crabtree Auto today on Hill Street, just south of 9th in Albany.
Lapdogs, yes men. Congress is full of people who blindly follow the party line and cave easily to special interests. You'd never confuse Peter DeFazio for one of those guys. Peter DeFazio has never been afraid to go against the flow or make some waves when he believes in something. That's why Peter stood up to leaders in both parties, leading the fight against the $700 billion Wall Street bailout. But this is nothing new. Peter has been fighting to crack down on Wall Street's reckless behavior for years. Peter supported the Wall Street Reform Act, but he's pushed for even stronger protections to safeguard the American people from ever bailing out Wall Street again. And to lower gas prices, Peter has fought big oil and gas speculators who care more about profits than people. Whether it's standing up to powerful Wall Street banks or greedy big oil executives, Peter DeFazio will take on anyone who threatens Oregon families.
I'm Peter DeFazio, candidate for Congress, and I approve this message.
Paid for by DeFazio for Congress.
Do you like to fly or would you like to take lessons? Hi, I'm Dan Miltberger. Owning your own plane can change your life. Would you like to own a share of 2 planes? I have formed an LLC that owns 2 172G Cessnas. With the LLC, you can share the basic expenses of owning an airplane with other owners. You can fly to Newport in 30 minutes and Boise is 3 hours. Call 541-926-9477. Again, that is 926-9477.
The 107th season of the Corvallis OSU Symphony Orchestra is about to begin, with 5 concerts in the regular season and a special concert on October 28th. Regular concerts include music from Chopin, Debussy and Ravel, Strauss and Tchaikovsky, the magnificent Holiday Concert, Bach's St. Matthew Passion with full choir, and the monumental Mahler Symphony No. 5. Warm up to the concert season Sunday, October 28th at 3 p.m. with Halloween with Harry, the music from Harry Potter. Get tickets early and find out about season symphony tickets online at cosusymphony.org. The regular season begins Sunday, November 18th and features popular piano virtuoso Alexander Tutenov on Chopin's Piano Concerto No. 2. Also, the Debussy Nocturnes and Ravel's Daphne and Chloe Part 2. Don't miss a single concert. Get your tickets now online at cosusymphony.org.
Radio for the Mid-Valley's horse lovers, The Horse Show with Rick Lamb, Sunday mornings at 9 on Smart Talk 1580.
This is Skin Talk, and we have about 4 minutes left in the show. On the show today, we've been pleased to have Dr. Bill Lair, who is the skin cancer surgeon. They call it Mohs surgery, M-O-H-S surgery. And I'll show Charlotte Staggs, physician's assistant at Silver Falls Dermatology. So, Bill, we've talked about the importance of sunblock.
Right.
Let's talk about getting what you call skin checks.
Skin checks. So skin check would be the euphemism for basically going into your provider, and that could be a dermatologist. You know, we're dermatologists, so obviously we think dermatologists do a great job of it, but some plastic surgeons do it. A lot of primary care docs do it, internists do it. For females, sometimes for, the private areas, your OB will do it, like your gynecologist would do the skin check. But the process is really having somebody who knows what skin cancer looks like look at your skin.
Right.
Because there's lots of types of skin cancer. I have textbooks in my office that are called Cancer of the Skin, and they're about 800 pages. There are many, many types of skin cancer. There's 3 common types: basal cell, squamous cell melanoma, which is a topic for another day. But they can have a myriad of presentations. They can look very, very different. So, the A, B, C, D, E's that you hear about, that's for melanoma. A pimple that doesn't heal, that's for a basal cell. But the most effective way, really, to get a skin check is to go into a person who knows what skin cancer looks like, get into a gown, and have them check your skin. And that's one of the main... That's kind of like one of the bread and butter things we do in our practice.
How often do you need to do that? We got 2 minutes.
I would say everybody needs to have a baseline at some point with somebody who has experienced eyes looking at their skin. If you've got a history of skin cancer, or if you have a history of melanoma, you should probably go every 3 to 6 months. If you have a history of a lot of atypical moles, and you'll know who you are because you've got lots of moles on your back and they look funny like fried eggs, you should probably go in every 6 months. If you've got a history of basal or squamous cell cancer within the past 2 years, you should probably go every 3 to 6 months. And if you have a remote history of basal or squamous cell cancer, or you've got lots of those pre-cancers, probably once every 6 months or so.
Okay. Hey, thank you for being on Valley Talk today. Dr. Bill Lair, a Mohs surgeon, and Charlotte Staggs, physician's assistant at Silver Falls Dermatology here in Albany, right next to the KGAL studio. We will have tomorrow, it will be From the Sidelines with Radio Ray and crew, and they'll talk about all things sports and just give their ideas about things that are going on. Very entertaining. If you're into sports, check it out. That is Fridays, every Friday from 11 to noon, right here on KGAL. I'm Dave Adams, and you make it a great day.
Locally owned and operated, this is the very independent News Talk 1580 KGAL, Lebanon, Albany, Corvallis.